today. Welcome to Tutorial Tuesday. I'm Leslie from JustLes Creations. I am super excited that you guys are here. If you haven't already, please drop in the comments. Let me know where you're tuning in from. I'm super excited. We are going to tackle a new one today. It was a spur of the moment thought that the Lord gave me yesterday morning to do Luigi. So here we are. We're going to tackle one. I've never done him before. My first time was yesterday. I am super excited the way he turned out. Super cute. I will tell you that his hat is a little heavy on this one. So today's tutorial, we're just going to cut back a little bit on the chocolate on his hat. But he turned out so cute. I'm looking forward to doing the whole collection of Mario and Luigi and some of the other characters. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is grab our lemon pound cake. This is such a beautiful pound cake to work with, and boy is it lemony. I'm going to use my Wilton's cookie scoop. It creates a 1 ounce cake ball, and that is exactly a perfect size to make cake pops. Rule in my house is 2 is 1, 1 is none, so I'm actually going to make 2 balls, and then we're going to put our lemon pound cake away for the next project. We're going to grab our cake pop dough. We're going to smush it in our hands. We want to knead it just for a few minutes, and then applying a lot of pressure, we're going to roll it. Use that pressure to smush it and roll it into a ball. Once we feel it all come together, we can go backwards, real light on the touch, and it'll create a beautiful little ball. All right, so if we pause the video right here, I'm going to take a look at Luigi. He's got this elongated head and narrow chin, so that's the way we're going to roll our cake pop ball. Using our thumb and our pointer finger, we're going to squeeze at the very bottom while rolling it with our other hand to create that point of a chin. And then I'm just going to use my finger and roll it back and forth, creating a little spot for his neck. We're going to put the lollipop stick there. Then I'm just going to make sure my finger marks are all smoothed out. I'm going to flip Luigi's head around and roll him a nice elongated forehead. Then I'm going to grab my lollipop stick. I've already dipped it in white chocolate up to about 1 inch. This creates the barrier between the paper lollipop stick and any fats or oils in my pound cake. I'm going to just dip the tip of it in the wet chocolate. I'm going to push it in my cake pop and spin it clockwise till I feel it catch. Then I'm going to turn it 1/4 of a turn back to make sure it's nice and secure. I'm going to get rid of any finger marks that I may have put in there and then wipe that little excess chocolate off of the bottom. I'll set it aside and let the chocolate on the inside firm up. Now, in the meantime, while we're waiting for them to firm up, I'm going to go ahead and pull up Luigi. We've got all these elements. We've got blue and white and black for his eyes. We've got the dark brown for his mustache. And we also have this flesh tone color right there that matches his facial color. We also have the rust for the back of his hair and his sideburns, and the green for his hat. All right, we've got a lot of elements to tackle. We're going to start out with the eyes. So we're going to take some white modeling chocolate here. I'm just going to flatten it out because we want to put it through my pasta maker for my KitchenAid so that it's nice and even. In the process, I noticed that my chocolate is getting a little tacky. We use cornstarch to take some of that tackiness out. And when that's all done, we can go ahead and put it through the pasta maker. In order to make our Luigi's eyes, we're going to use this 1/4 by 1/2 inch oval shape. It comes in this geometric mini cutters kit. You can buy them on Amazon for about $10 or so. I'm going to cut out a bunch of them for our cake pops here. I've got 2 cake pops, so I need a total of 4, but I'll cut out a couple extra ones. And then while I have this white already, I have a 2A Wilton's icing tip. This will be the circle piece that'll go on Luigi's hat with his letter monogram. Using my palette knife, I'm going to take off that little teeny tiny piece of modeling chocolate that sticks out based off of the cutter where the metal pieces come together, and then set them aside. Now we're going to do the blues. We're going to do the exact same thing with our blue. We're going to put it through our pasta maker. Now in order to make our iris, I have this little tiny cutter from a fleur-de-lis from my cake making days years ago. I'm just going to use it to cut out little tiny ovals to make the colored portion of his eyes. I'll remove that excess chocolate off of there. I'll take my little blue dots. I will line them in a row. I'm going to stick my finger in some cornstarch because I want to round off these eyes. I want to make around the edges nice and flat so when I lay them on the whites, they will kind of blend nicely. And now we're going to do the exact same thing with our pupils. We'll just go ahead and flatten out the black a little bit, run it through our pasta maker. And then I'm going to use the exact cutter that I used for the blue and cut out the same size. Now my black is super thin. I don't need height. I don't need bulk. I just want super thin. I just want the color. So again, I'm going to take them and line them with the blue. And now we're going to grab our paintbrush and we're going to put them all together. Starting with the whites, we're going to add a little bit of water to the bottom. I want some of the whites to remain exposed, so I just put water on the bottom. I pick up the blue, I lay it on top of the whites, and then I just push them down just a little bit so that they will stick nicely. And then when I'm done with that, I'll grab my paintbrush. I will do the exact same thing. Just put water on the bottom. And I will use my knife and then I will add the black pupils on the bottom of our Luigi eyes. I will do this to all of them until they are all completed. It's time to move them out of the way and prep for the next step. Before we make any more elements, we're going to stir our chocolate and go ahead and dip our cake pops. Since there's not a whole lot of chocolate left in my bowl, I'm going to use my spoon to go around that lollipop stick, making sure the chocolate hits the stick, and then I'll dip the rest of it down in the chocolate to get the top. I'm going to let gravity have her way and shake off that chocolate. In the meantime, I'm going to look for all the air bubbles. Make sure that you pop them. We don't want those little tiny holes where the fats and oils can escape after the chocolate is dried. We're going to finish shaking that off. And then I'm just going to take my finger and wipe off that excess along the bottom. And then we'll sit it over on our tray and let it firm up. In the meantime, while we're waiting for that, we're going to grab our dark brown. We're going to make Luigi's mustache. So I'm going to use a little cornstarch and remove some of that tackiness out of the chocolate, and I'm going to flatten it. I'm going to use the widest setting on my KitchenAid mixer. I want a nice thick piece of modeling chocolate. I'm going to use the same cutter that I used for his eyes, and I'm going to cut out 2 for each of my cake pops and then an extra one in case we need it. I'm going to grab the number 7 icing tip. This will be for his eyebrows, so we'll cut the same amount. I had to dip my icing tip into some cornstarch because the brown still was tacky. I really like to use the Wilton's icing tips to create pieces to make them look even and very symmetrical. And then once we get all them cut, we'll put our stuff away, give us some room. We're going to take the little tiny balls, we're going to roll them out like a piece of rice, put a point on the ends so they look like eyebrows, and then we're just going to put them aside. We'll grab our palette knife. We're going to cut the top third of each one of them off, and then we're going to take what's remaining and we're going to turn it into what would look like a Nike symbol, you know, like the little check mark pointed at the ends and then real fat and rounded on the insides, on the center areas. Now when we're doing mustaches, make sure that you are creating those little check marks where the fat side is opposite of the other one. So the long skinny piece will be out towards the ear. The smaller part is going to be in the center. Then we're going to go ahead and make our noses and our ears. We're going to take that flesh tone, keep it nice and thick like we did for the brown. If you need to, use cornstarch to take that tackiness off. When you're ready, go ahead and put it through the widest setting on your pasta maker. We're going to grab our wide number 2A Wilton's tip. That one didn't come out very well. Let's do another one. So we're going to need 4 of these for our pops, and of course we always have the extra one. We'll move those out of the way. So we're going to line these up in a nice row so it makes it easier. I'm going to grab the medium-sized ball tool from my Sculpty toolkit and make the indent on the inside of Luigi's ear. Don't be afraid to use cornstarch to keep your ball tool from sticking to your modeling chocolate. I'm going to take my palette knife and I'm going to cut just the top third off, right where the inner circle starts to indent. This will give Luigi a really cool looking ear. We'll move them out of the way in preparation to make his nose. Here I have a coupler from an icing tip collection. I'm going to use it. And since I need a big fat nose for Luigi, I'm going to actually cut 2 of them for each one of my cake pops. So he has a nice big bulbous nose. You can see how big it is right here. We'll just make it into a ball and then we'll put that aside. Next, we're going to work on his hair. So I've got this nice rust color for Luigi's hair. Again, we're going to put it through my pasta maker. I don't need really thick hair for this. I'm just looking for color. So I'm going to use the medium. I'm not going to use the thinnest selection on my KitchenAid mixer, but I'm going to go probably a step up from that so that I have at least a little bit of thickness, but not super thin. All right, I'm going to take my palette knife now and I'm going to cut off a third of it. We don't need chocolate all the way on the top of his head because we've got a hat to put on it, and then I'm going to split them in 2. Those little halves will actually make up Luigi's sideburns. Now I'm going to take right across where I cut and flatten it out, make it wider so that it'll go the whole way around the top of his head. And then I'm just going to take the side of my palette knife and I'm just going to put little slits down through that will indicate his hair, and we can put it on his head and have it form around the bottom of his neckline and behind his ears. And we will do that for the other ones as well. Once we finish this up, we'll move it aside. We'll do up the other 2 and pull them out of the way. And then we're going to take those little sideburn pieces and kind of roll them into more of a rectangular shape. And I want to kind of leave that point on the bottom. So if you look at Luigi's picture, it does come to a little point beside his ear. So we'll just do that, just flattening it down. All right, and now we're going to make his hat. The first thing we need to do is make the brim. So I flattened out some modeling chocolate, and as you saw, it was really tacky looking because it was shiny. I used cornstarch, and then I have this circle cutter that I'm using to create the brim. And again, I'm just going to cut it right in half. I don't need the full circle, just half. And then I'm going to take my leftover modeling chocolate, I'm going to roll it into a ball and try to form it into the crown part of the ball cap. Now I don't want a whole lot of chocolate on the top of his head, and I just put it down on the table and I just kind of start pushing. Luigi's hat has a very tall part in the front of the crown of his hat. That's where the monogram letter will go. So we want to make sure that's nice and tall. And then I grab the brim. I'm going to form it into the shape of a moon so that it can go underneath the crown of the hat nicely. Once I get those made, I'm going to grab my paintbrush and just put a little bit of water on the part that I just formed. I'm going to turn the high portion of the hat around and just lay it on the top of the brim. And then I'm going to just take my fingers and smooth the 2 of them together so that it looks like it's just one piece. And if you get too much water on it, you can always take just a little paper towel or something and get the excess off of it. And we're just going to lay it aside and let it firm up. All of our elements are now completed. We're going to go ahead and put our Luigis together. We're going to grab our paintbrush and add just a little bit of water to that mustache. Picking up our cake pop right in the middle, we're going to put our mustache on there and just gently push it down on there so it doesn't come off. We'll grab the other side of the mustache. We'll get our paintbrush, put a little bit of water on it to use as glue. We'll put the other side of the mustache on. Just be real careful when you're putting them on here that you don't push too hard, that you crack the chocolate around the lollipop stick. You'll see I do a real quick sneak peek at the bottom of my cake pop to make sure that I did not crack it. Then I pick up my palette knife, dip it in some chocolate, and then give Luigi a bottom lip. I'm just going to allow that chocolate just to roll off the tip of my palette knife and create that bottom lip. I'll put my Luigi over on the tray just for a minute so I can pick up the first of his ears. I'm going to use a little bit of chocolate as my glue because they will stick off of Luigi's head. So I'm going to make sure that I have that extra little bit of glue on there to make sure he stays on there. I'm going to pick up my Luigi. Now the bottom of his ear should line up right with the mustache. And I also want to leave about 1/8 of an inch between his ear and his mustache so that we can put the sideburns on there. So if there's any chocolate, the wet chocolate that's snuck out underneath there, just go ahead and take your palette knife and clean that excess off. And let's go ahead and do the other one. Again, we're just going to put a little chocolate right on the edge. And then we will align the bottom of it up with the bottom of the mustache. And make sure it's securely in place. And then if you have any excess chocolate that pushed out, go ahead and use your palette knife and clean that excess off. We'll go ahead and put it back on the tray, and then we're going to put Luigi's eyes on there. Now for this, I'm just going to use a little bit of water because it doesn't stick off of his head, so water will be good. And remember, a little goes a long way, so you don't need a lot. And I'm just going to tap it on there. Almost lost it. We'll spin it around. And we're going to put it right in the middle of his mustache area. We need to leave enough room between his eyes so we can put his big bulbous nose in there. So you don't want the eyes to touch up against each other. And then we'll do the second one, again, using just a little bit of water. And we'll put that on his head and kind of even them up right in the middle where his mustache is. Now I'm just taking my thumb and pushing the edges down to kind of smooth it out a little bit. Next, we're going to put the eyebrows on here. Again, we're going to use some water to attach our eyebrows. It only takes a little bit. We'll grab them and then we'll put them on above his eyes. And we'll just use our fingers to push it down just a little bit. And then we'll set it off to the side. Next, we're going to grab the sideburns and we're going to go ahead and use some chocolate on this to attach it to his head. The very tip of the point needs to be right there at the side of his mustache. You'll just kind of wiggle it in between his ear and his eye and the eyebrow there. Once that's secure in place, we'll go ahead and grab the other one. Again, I just used some chocolate. I just put a little bit down on that sideburn. You can use water if you want to here. I just chose to use chocolate. For this particular element, it really does not matter. And then I put it between his eye and his ear, trying to make that point right there at the bottom of the mustache. And then I just secured it in place. Now, if you squish out chocolate on there, feel free to take your palette knife and take that excess off if necessary. Now on this, I'm going to use some water. Again, my general rule of thumb is that if it sticks off of your cake pop, you should secure it better with chocolate. If it's going to lay up against your cake pop, water is fine. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but I did break a little piece of his hair off. We'll come back to that. And I used water on this chocolate. So I kind of made him look like he had kind of a bald head because we're going to put the hat there. We don't need extra chocolate up there. And then I'm just gently kind of shifting the pieces of the hair around his head, starting at the top and working my way down. And I'm separating the ones by his ears, if you can see what I'm doing, just to kind of give it some textured look. And then I'm going to grab that little piece that I did break off whenever I was putting the water on there. And then I will put a little bit more water, make sure it sticks. And I'll put that up against behind his ear where it belongs and fill in that little gap. I'll use my little palette knife to shift it where I want it, and then I will gently press it down to make sure it stays, and then I'll separate his hair, and then I'll just kind of push it up against the side of the cake pop. I'm really liking the way Luigi is turning out. I decided it's time to go ahead and put his nose on. Now, because it will stick off of Luigi's face, I want to make sure that I'm going to use something that will help it really stay on. So I use some chocolate, and then I just put his nose on. I make sure that it's not only on his face, but it's touching that mustache as well. I'm going to grab the little white dot that's going to go on his hat, because we're going to get ready to put his hat on his head. We're going to use some water for it, because my chocolate is really still very wet. I don't know if you can see the shiny to it. So it just in and of itself is going to stick to the chocolate because it's a little bit warm. Still, I had just made it before we recorded this video, so it had not cooled completely, so it's going to stick really well. So I'm just going to put it on the top of his head. And I'm just going to put it in the location that I want it. And I'm just going to gently press it down a little bit to stick to his head. Now remember, be very, very careful when you're doing this, as you're putting the weight of chocolate pieces on the top of your cake pop, that it does not crack around the base, around the lollipop stick. And if it does, just use a little bit of chocolate to cover that crack, and it should be fine. All right, we'll sit Luigi over here on the board. We're going to grab the little white circle. This will have the monogram, the letter L. I have some Kelly Green luster dust that I'm going to mix with some vodka. Any clear alcohol will do. I just prefer vodka. If you have poppy paint, you can definitely use some poppy paint. This is just another avenue of writing on chocolate. So I have just a little bit of vodka in here. Earlier I had mixed up some. The vodka had evaporated away, so I'm just adding some more vodka to refresh this luster dust. Be careful you don't add too much vodka. You don't want it to be watercolor. You want it to be more like an acrylic paint. Once you get it the correct consistency, go ahead and paint Luigi's initial. Then I'm going to take my paintbrush, add just a little bit of water on the front of the crown of the hat. I'm going to use my palette knife, pop that little circle on the center of Luigi's hat, and then gently press it down. We'll set it off to the side for a moment. I grab my paint tray again. This time I'm going to grab some poppy paint, the white, give it a good shake, put a little drip in my tray, and then make sure that you wipe off the top of your poppy paint bottle so that it doesn't get caked on the inside of your lid. I have a little tiny paintbrush. We're just going to add that little bit of a spark to Luigi's eyes. We're just going to put a little white dot in each one. And the other eye. Need a little bit more poppy paint on that one. And there we go. That looks amazing. Our Luigi looks so cool. He turned out so well. Now it's your turn. Now you can go try it and really impress your family, friends, and clients. I know you can do this. Step outside of your box and be creative. I believe in you.